Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Endgame. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, we finally get context about this whole gold thing. Obviously, we'll break it down more as I break down throughout the rest of the episode, but I think it's so interesting because it's like, all right, so what's this gold reserve situation going to be? It's been ticking down in the background the entire time. So you're like, okay, what's that all about? We see in a flashback that obviously Fedorov's story this episode revolves around her telling a story she used to read to her daughter all the time. And at the same time, we saw Sergei torturing a guy for information about some gold. So you're like, okay, so what's this all about? Like, what are the Bellocks? They even say, like, we're looking for Lady Belloc is what they're well, he was like, oh, you think I'm going to give you the location of Lady Belloc? So I guess they are aware that she was a Lady Belloc. They knew she was in charge of everything, and I guess maybe it wasn't until after the fact they realized, like, who she was. Like, once again, maybe she is kind of like, maybe she's like a full-blooded Belloc, or she's married into the family. I think it'd be interesting if she was married into the Bellocs and she's like the only one standing, just to parallel it very nicely with Elena, who got married into Sergei's family. Once again, still hasn't really gone into why why someone wanted her and her dad dead. Like, we still never circle back to like what that's about, but maybe there's some correlation there. Not unless we find out she's like related to the Bellocks or something like that, where it's like, right, she's kind of like some family royalty that if she ever came back, she could claim everything. So they're trying to kill her because she's all right. That's just probably 100% not the case, but just a wild theory. I just sat here and thought, was like, oh, never crossed my mind. I think that'd be too much. I mean, it's a possibility, I guess, but still, like, I don't know, you think they'd be a lot more welcoming if that was the case, but not unless it's some infighting amongst the Bellocks, because royal situations happen like that, like a succession to a throne type of thing going on, that could get bloody, turn family against family pretty damn quickly, and history has shown how, the shiny and glamorous, very befitting me saying all that, considering like the gold and the episode is called like All That Glitters, but how shiny the throne and all that power and that prestige and position could be, so you could turn family against each other. So it's not out of the realm of the possibilities. I just, once again, just something I just quickly thought of that I'm like, I don't think that's going to be the case, but we'll see. Still don't, like I said, why she was almost killed all those years ago. Well, I mean, the Bellocks and Sergei's family probably had their beef for a while, so that's probably not too much of a surprise there. But once again, why the U.S. government is involved in that, like why they're basically wiping out potentially the Belloc's main competition. How did that happen? Must be some blackmail type of situation, the right handshakes and leverage they have against the U.S. government people to position everything. Because the big question now in this episode for Val was, well, you've gotten rid of everyone on the board. Everyone in this picture we've kind of dealt with in some shape or form. So there's no one left. But for her, it's like, no. Because she even says in a flashback with Sergei, we will not stop until everyone responsible for that church bombing is dealt with. And the entire time, Val and them never thought about, right, there technically is one more person in this photo. Well, one person in this room. We just don't see them because they're the person taking the photo. I'm sure there's plenty of people like, well, duh, that's obvious. I'm stupid. It never crossed my mind like, all right, there's one more person. Like, I thought the person whose face was hidden was going to be like the main goal or whatever. It's like, no, that was dealt with last episode. Was it not last episode, I believe? And so I was like, oh, now that that's happened, what's going to happen? I thought like I figured she had more targets on her list, but I thought it was just going to be people who weren't in the photo. It's like, no, everyone in that photo it makes sense because everyone in that photo directly had some correlation or connection to the bombing that killed Sergei and Elena's family. So, and I love that once again, he was up there kissing up to Julia last episode, and he's doing it this time. And the guy almost has no shame, because you'd almost be like, hey, Doke, at least show that you are at least somewhat loyal, that you're like, hey, I don't feel right taking Director Rial's job, but you super jump on it like, you know what? and there's gonna be no problem. I'm happy to take this because Julia's like, right, let me tell you what your career is gonna look like. And the moment she starts talking like that, I'm like, she's looking a little suspicious, like she might be the next person on Elena's hit list. And I do love that the entire episode, you're like, oh, is it her? Is it her? She got kidnapped, so. But just because you get used as part of the plan doesn't always make you guilty. I mean, look at Doak. He was used, forced with those lasers to back up until they revealed the whole situation in that bank. So he was just a means to an end there. But I think it's also like, right, I kind of don't like you, Doak, and I know who you are personality-wise, so it may feel very befitting to use you, for example. Because probably could have set that situation up so did anyone else. But once again, it ends up being a theme in this episode of this whole situation has brought out the darker side of everyone, and even Director Riel being like, no, maybe the actual aspect of this is not actually, it's more so, it's bringing stuff to the surface that was always there. Like, it might not just be like, oh, this Elena thing brought our darker sides. Like, these darker sides have always been there. We've just never had them brought to the surface like they have been now. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing of like, how much is our very nature finally coming to the surface, and how much is stuff that just came about because of these things. And I'm sure it's got him questioning himself this episode, because he was super quick to be like, right, he's getting pressure from the White House and all this needs to stop, especially because now it's become such a public spectacle that he's being pushed into a corner. So what's his response to it? Yeah, we're going to have to go after Elena's daughter. We know where she is, which Val had to be like, yo, we can't do that. It's like, he's saying like, right, what has our opponent done? They've done terrible stuff. So if they get in the mud, we're going to have to get in the mud with them. But Val's perspective is, you know what that makes us look? That makes us look desperate. The fact is that we're willing to go that far shows that we are being backed in the corner, and that's not going to do us any favors. But also in general, kidnapping a child, using that as leverage, it is kind of scummy and low, because anyone Elena's ever gotten involved in this have been full-grown adults. So you would be crossing a line that, yes, Elena's does some dastardly stuff, but there is an element of, if the word ever got out that you kidnapped the child, especially Elena's child, like, the public would crucify you, especially because everyone's hashtag free Elena, because there's a conspiracy theorist named, what was his name? Was it the social skeptic? I'm blanking on his name now. They kept saying it the entire episode, and I kept like, I'm forgetting it now. But Home Dude ended up putting out a lot of info about Elena and what she's up to, and now it ended up rallying so many people around her cause. In fact, once again, they had this conversation earlier in the season about like, oh, she's almost getting heralded as like almost this folk hero. And it's like, we're seeing that because, right, all the government, the FBI is hiding the fact is that, oh, Elena's taking down some high-level corrupt people, and those people are going to be on trial soon and everything. So that had been a well-kept secret until now. Granted, the reporter situation, that was super public, but that was the only one that was to the general public was that public. But now word has gotten out about every other takedown Elena's performed. So it's like, right, she's the hero. She's exposing the evil that's in our government. So like, yeah, like, why should she suffer? They even show up at Fort Totten because of all of this. Circling back to Doak and Julia, they all get gassed. Julia gets taken. I love that the director Riel was like, oh, so what were you doing there? He's like, we were just having a chat about strategy. There was nothing like shady going on. He was like, I didn't say anything was shady going on, but the fact is you're mentioning it must mean that something was going on. I'm like, oh, got him. Because like Doak is trying to be sneaky. Like, if you were to just be honest, it's like, right, she was offering me a job and stuff like that. Granted, you would have had to go into the specifics, but once again, we don't know how much of a conversation they had last episode because Riel was like, oh, no, we're going to talk about why you were missing through all this action and what you were really up to. He was up there trying to steal your job from you and secure his future. So, yeah. Once again, it makes him look like such a tool bag. Once again, it's like, you were such a tool in the beginning. You kind of like, all right, maybe you're not as bad as that. Never mind. You're a complete and utter douche. So that's the complicated thing with that character. He has too much self-interest involved. And I think he would end up becoming one of the very people Elena would end up targeting. Because it's not just about revenge. I mean, revenge is... the culmination of everything for her. That's what this all stems to. It's revenge, but at the same time, you're exposing corruption because she doesn't enjoy she hates the hypocrisy of like, right, this is a group of people who are doing some super shady stuff, working with a group that's super shady too, that basically the foundation of what the American people have come to know is 100% a lie, and trying to expose all that. So, I don't know, it's first and foremost, once again, it is revenge. That's her main goal. But secondary aspects is the ripple effect that it's going to have, people being broken free from the chains and facades that have been laid out before them, I think is kind of Elena's situation. So, getting into the episode even more, Doak decided that he's going to tag along. It's like, cool, Val and Anthony got their whole thing, and then here comes Doak, who's kind of been out of the picture for a little while, kind of barking orders. I think Anthony's almost like, shut the hell up. It's just kind of like, don't come barking at me. It's like, oh, we can't stand you, we hate, and like Val just like reluctantly accepts his help. But like the way he's talking slick the entire time, Val's starting to pick up stuff here and there, and like the way he's talking of like, because, like, he was like, if it was me, I'd get a Black Hulk and I'd go get Elena's daughter now. And Val was like, good thing it's not your decision. He's like, yet. And you're like, oh, God. And Val was almost like, what the hell is that about? And then the way he was so adamant about, let's get Julia. It's almost like, if your concern was like, oh, my God, she's a victim, we need to help her. It's like, it shows how scummy you are, because it's almost like, oh my God, here's the woman who's setting my future up. If she dies before it's all written in stone, I'm kind of screwed, because all I'm going to have is her word. It's just hearsay. It's not anything written down, nothing official. So it makes it seem like you don't have the most altruistic reasons for saving her, because it's like, right, and the way he was so defensive of her, too. It's like, no, I'm getting defensive of her. Like, not unless there's something there. I don't think it is. I mean, maybe it could eventually develop into that. But I think it's just more so like, no, there's no way the woman who's helping ensure my future is bad. Because if she gets tainted bad, then it kind of screws up any attempt of his of getting further up the food chain with her help. So, once again, it's just self-preservation on Doak's side of things. So, but as they're looking into things, it turns out the place that Julia was hidden was a mine, and the reason why they were able to trace it back to where it belonged to, because they found clay in one of the vehicles. I even love that it plays into as Valor explained that Elena's got her Robin Hood thing going on, because the van they used to drop off the flowers that gassed everybody, they brought it back to the flower place that they stole it from, and also like filled it with gas and returned the keys. It's like, right, don't want to turn, like, you want to make yourself seem like you're a person of the people. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little detail. But it turns out Julia owns the clay mines, and she says that, yes, she bought them through a shell corporation, so that seems shady, until they look into it and find out that the person who took that photo is the president, and we've seen pop in from time to time this episode, President Wright, interestingly enough, who's played by, I'm blanking on the actor's name. I'm not really, sometimes I'm good with actors' names, sometimes I'm not, but the thing I'm best known for is, NBC-wise, Grimm. I'm blanking on his character's name, dude. Was it, I keep thinking, like, is it Rossi? Is that, like, was that his character? I don't know. I include it in the comments down below, but, after this, but, yeah, I knew he was, I was like, I feel like there's something I've seen him in post Grimm, but I can't remember. I was like, was Grimm the last thing I saw him in? Because that was like 2017. But I'm trying to think, was there something more recent? I feel like it was, but I can't place it. Once again, second person from something NBC related that I'm aware of. Once again, Anthony, I know as from Blind Spot. I mentioned that in I think the first episode, but tangents and all that aside. But it turns out Wright was the one who took the photo, and he was something else. Obviously, he wasn't president then. He was someone else in that staff, which makes you go like, right, are you going to go after the guy who was president at the time? Like, he had to give the go-ahead on some of that stuff, so you would think But maybe a lot of that happened behind his back. Maybe that's what that's supposed to be. I don't know. Because I'm surprised she's not going after the president, guy who was president at the time, not unless he's already dead or maybe he's a little harder to get to. These are the people directly connected. The president's just, in this particular regard, maybe the argument is that the president's a figurehead, that he was passed some information and told that's what this is about, even though it wasn't what it was about. Maybe that's Elena's. But no, Elena's still, the guy who set up the bomb and everything, so he had his reasons for it, but Elena and Sergei still killed him regardless, so I don't know if that would be enough to be like, oh, he didn't know what was what, he just kind of signed off. I mean, they gave Home Dude a second shot, but to be fair, that's because, guy from a couple episodes ago, what was it, episode 4 or 5, that guy, they gave him a second shot, but that's also because Elena was pregnant at the time, and that gave her a different view on things. So got him to help, because obviously he did feel bad about it. They all, well, except for the main people, they don't seem as heartbroken about it until like their entire worlds came crashing down. So, but it turns out that Julia has no idea what this is all about, because once again, it seemed like once again, maybe the president knew about it, but whatever went down in that room, which was the bombing, all those people involved, that was super well kept secret. Because even Julia was like, "What are you there's, it'd be understandable why there'd probably be no public record of something like that." So she's completely in the dark about it. The clay mine she bought was because she was trying to like make a water facility or something like that. And like I said, I love that Val was like, "Oh wow, so you really are the honest citizen that people say you are." Because I'm like, it kind of gives you a sigh of relief, because you're like, oh wow, so there are actually decent and good people in this government and not just all shady people with connections. It's like, okay, cool. There's at least some sigh of relief there. But doesn't change the fact is that Doak is still doing some shady stuff behind everyone else's back. But it turns out Julia bought that mine because the president, he suggested she do it. In fact, he gave her the money to do it, but it's in her name. So later on, they can't do anything, because even if they brought this up, he has plausible deniability. It's like, no, it's all in her name. So if anyone's going to take the fall, she will. So it doesn't work on that front. Once again, Doak is so adamant about his position and stuff like, yeah, you better be on the right side of things. And yeah, he's like, I'm going to be in command. He's like, you don't want to work your way, get yourself relocated out of this job. And I love that he's gloating so much. I'm winning. And the moment those words finish coming out of his mouth, it's like, cool, everything that goes down in the bank. I'm like, okay. I was like, is it going to, at first I was like, oh, is it going to be a bomb that blows up all the gold or what? Then the water starts coming down. I'm like, is it going to be like acid or something? Like, what's going to happen? And then it is nothing but acid. I mean, it's all melted down. I'm like, oh, what? Ooh. And then I was like, it wasn't acid. I was like, it's fake, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, it's made of clay. I was like, oh my God. And as Elena points out, that's 5 Billy. No, excuse me, 500 Billy that's gone. I mean, that's fake. So that's like, okay, you're like, okay, so if that's fake gold, where the hell is $500 billion worth of gold at right now? And it seems like Elena probably doesn't have it. She just knows where it is, because they probably learned it. Well, either she's playing hard to get, because we saw in the past, they didn't know where the gold was. They were still looking for it, but that was 18 months ago. In that time frame, they might have found it. So they might actually know where it is, and they're trying to leverage that into taking down the president. But it might also be like a feint where she's like, right, I actually don't know where it is, but if you help me do what you got to do, then eventually the word will get out about it. But it's like, yeah, I love from the beginning, it's like, yo, we can't tell anyone. Everybody's got signed NDAs. No one talks, not even the firefighters that went inside. We cannot talk about this, because it will literally destabilize this place. That's like, wait, what? And then people will stop believing in the government, like riots and chaos, as Valerie puts it. But then she realizes, like, right, that is part of your plan, which Elena's like, right, the bigger picture, and she keeps quoting like that skeptic dude the entire episode. Because I love that he was just a random conspiracy theorist, because he was like, right, Julia, the chief of staff, she's a clone. Yeah, the rich and powerful, they clone themselves and stuff like that. Even despite all that, there's still some truth into what he says, and he's the one that once again exposes everything, where it's like, oh man, melted gold. It's like, whoa, did Elena Fedorova just pull off the biggest heist in human history? $500 billion worth of gold. I don't think she has the gold. I don't even think she knows where it is. She might. They might have found out, but I don't think she actually knows, but we'll see. But that's the question. Where is the gold? Did the current president, did he give that to someone else? I would assume it's related to the Bellocks. Like maybe they've been using that gold for some other shady stuff. Because for you to come up with that gold went somewhere and you've been faking it like it's still there. It's like, which is like, what does that do to what is that going to do to the economy, knowing that like the Federal Reserve of like that gold, like I don't know what that means in correlation wise, like how that affects the economy. God, I'm not the economical person. I'm sure someone who's from an economical standpoint, even if it's like, oh, this is like borderline fiction, whatever, I'd assume there's checks and balances to still warrant, I don't know. I'd assume there should be some checks and balances so like everything wouldn't completely and utterly collapse, but I don't know. I don't know how all that works. I'm ignorant to like economical stuff. So I don't know. It's interesting that all this is happening. Oh, really quickly, the conversation between the director and Dokes is like, oh yeah, I know what you've been up to. And he's like, oh, Turner told you? He's like, no, Val didn't say anything. I got friends and connections. So he's like, basically at the end of it, be careful that you don't end up drowning in all of this. That your ambition, don't let it get so in front of you that you end up giving into your darker inclinations and you end up doing some shady stuff and you're going to end up drowning. He's like, don't worry, sir. I know how to swim. It seems so backstabby because, you know, you want to act like you want to be so upfront with him and stuff like that. He's like, hey, sir, I'm glad you called me. I want to talk to you about putting a unit together. It's like, you want to talk to me like everything is fine while you're secretly trying to steal my job from me. He's like, you want to take it? Go ahead and take it. You take all this mess and see if you got it handled. Because it's going to blow up it's going to blow up in your face. Because Doke is so busy looking after numero uno, trying to make himself look good. That's all he's been doing since day one. He's just so far up his own ass that it's going to come back and he's going to bite him in the ass, you know? Because he's going to end up being put in charge at some point, and Elena's going to come for that ass after he screws up big time. He's going to do something stupid like go after Elena's daughter, because he'll be the one that do it given the opportunity, even though the director Riel would not want to do that, even though he's been put in that position, you know. And even Val brings that up to Elena's like, tell us the truth. Because if you don't, it's like, no, I haven't held my daughter in 18 months. You lay a single finger on her hair, like I will dump that $500 billion of gold in the Atlantic Sea and no one will see it and be able to get it. Like that will be that. So once again, maybe she actually not only knows where the gold is, maybe she actually does have it. Would mean that she's holding this entire country hostage in that regard. It's like pretty big moves, bro. I mean, it's not like she hasn't been making big moves, but that's pretty wild. But it's also because she wants to expose the president. It's like, right, this is potentially, I doubt it, but potentially the last person on her target list. He's the biggest. Because I think at the end of the day, she still needs to go after Lady Belloc. So there's that whole angle to it. So there is that. And then on the other side of things, we have everything with Sergei and the whole Owen situation. So Owen is in solitary, and yes, it was in self-defense, so it'll be good, but they'll have to check the surveillance footage. But the problem is, it's going to be a while before they end up checking that, and they're on a very tight time schedule. But Sergei's like, we need Owen. I was like, oh, I didn't know he was integral to the plan. He is, in the fact that whatever they're doing is a two-man job, and now Sergei's going to have to handle it on his own until Owen gets released, and it's like, oh shoot, everything's good. Thanks for having my back. Hey, thanks for having my back. And the moment Owen walks away, it's all sketchy. I'm like, how did you get released? Did you sell him out? Like, what's going on there? And then talking to the lawyer, he was like, Sergey, he told Sergey, I had nothing to do with that. I think Owen Turner's going to be an issue. You're like, damn it, dude. That means the Bellocks must have gotten to him. It's like, we're going to offer you something. We're going to get you from underneath Elena and Sergey. We're going to help you out. In fact, we're going to make sure your wife is not mixed up in all of this. You help us, then this is all going to be Gucci. You know, you get to ensure your wife's safety. Even if it doesn't benefit him, it's like you, in the sense of maybe you're not going to get out of jail and, you know, maybe you're going to end up having to kill Sergey to kind of work this all out. But at the very least, your wife will be okay and safe from Elena. It's maybe the agreement that gets made with Lady Bella, because she's the only one that would be in a position, because we already know she has connections in the prison, so with the warden and such. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to find out what he got offered. I mean, was this all just for the sake of all the good out there, or was it just specifically Val that was? Because the whole point was Val was going to get mixed up in this, but she was never supposed to get hurt. And that's when Owen was first like, yo, if something happens to Val, like, I will end you myself. So he always knew she was part of the plan. And I guess to protect her as much as possible, he went along with the plan. Maybe he believes like, right, this is for the greater good, for the bigger picture, beyond just the chaos and riots and just taking her personal revenge. There is a bigger picture in play here. Because I think it is like the Bellocks have too much power and too much reign that it might not just stop with the U.S. government, but at least here they have a major foothold. If not, this is their biggest foothold. So it's like, right, if you can cut off the connections and supplies and make them start hemorrhaging, maybe that'll put them in a vulnerable enough position for you to strike and wipe them out for good. So I don't know. That's kind of where my thoughts are currently about everything. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where everything ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.